Hello, the third part of the story of Skellig. So, and just for Ruby Gale, no, I don't live in my office, and here I am, allowed out of it. I leaned over the tea chests and shone the torch, and there he was. He hadn't moved. He opened his eyes and closed them again. "You again?" he said in his cracked, squeaky voice. "What are you doing there?" I whispered. He sighed, like he was sick to death of everything. "Nothing," he squeaked. "Nothing, nothing and nothing." I watched a spider scrambling across his face. He caught it in his fingers and popped it in his mouth. "They're coming to clear the rubbish out," I said, "and the whole place could collapse." He sighed again. "Got an aspirin?" "An aspirin? Never mind." His face was pale as dry plaster. His black suit hung like a sack on his thin bones. My heart pounded. The dust was clogging my nostrils and throat. I chewed my lips and watched him. "You're not Ernie Myers, are you?" I said. "That old git, coughing his guts and spewing everywhere." "Sorry," I whispered. "What do you want?" he said. "Nothing." "You got an aspirin?" "No." "Thanks very much." "What will you do?" I said. "They'll clear the place out. It'll all collapse. What'll—" "Nothing. Go away." I listened for noises from outside, for them calling me. "You could come inside," I said. He laughed, but he didn't smile. "Go away," he whispered. He picked a blue bottle from the front of his suit and popped it in his mouth. "Is there something I could bring you?" he said. "An aspirin," he squeaked. "Something you'd like to eat?" I said. 27 and 53. "What?" "Nothing. Go away. Go away." I backed away, out into the light. I brushed the dust and blue bottles and cobwebs off. I looked up and saw Dad through the frosted glass of the bathroom window. I could just hear him singing The Black Hills of Dakota. "Are you the new boy here?" said somebody. I turned round. There was a girl's head sticking up over the top of the wall into the back lane. "Are you the new boy?" she repeated. "Yes, I'm Mina." I stared at her. "Well," she said. "What?" She clicked her tongue and shook her head and said in a bored-sounding, sing-song voice, "I'm Mina. You're—" "Michael," I said. "Good." Then she jumped back and I heard her land in the lane. "Nice to meet you, Michael," she said through the wall as she ran away. When he came down from his bath, Dad started moaning that there was no bread and there was no eggs, and in the end he said, "I know, let's have a takeaway, eh?" It was like a light went on in my head. We had the menu from the Chinese round the corner in his hand. We'll get it for when your mum gets back," he said. "What do you fancy?" 27 and 53, I said. "That's clever," he said. "You did that without looking. What's your next trick?" He wrote it all down. "Special chow mein for Mum, spring rolls and pork char suey for you, beef and mushroom for me, crispy seaweed and prawn crackers for the baby. And if she won't eat them, we will, and serve her right, eh? She'll be back on boring mother's milk again." He phoned the Chinese, gave me the cash, and I ran round to collect it all. By the time I got back, Mum and the baby were there. She tried to make a fuss of me and kept asking me about the journey and about school. Then the baby puked over her shoulder and she had to get cleaned up. Dad belted through his beef and mushroom and the seaweed and prawn crackers. He said he was all clogged up with Ernie's dust and he swigged off a bottle of beer. When he saw I was leaving half of mine, he reached over with the fork. I covered it with my arm. "You'll get fat," I said. Mum laughed. "Fatter?" she said. "I'm famished," he said. "Worked like a blooming slave for you lot today." He reached out and tickled the baby's chin and kissed her. Especially for you, little chick. I kept my arm in front of the food. Fatso, I said. He lifted his shirt and grabbed his belly with his fingers. See? Said Mum. He looked at us. He dipped his finger into the sauce at the edge of my plate. Delicious, he said. But enough's enough. I've had an ample sufficiency, thank you. Then he went to the fridge and got another beer and a great big lump of cheese. I tipped what was left of 27 and 53 into the takeaway tin and put it in the outside bin. I saw Mina again later that evening. I was in the little front garden with Dad. She stood there in the thistles and dandelions. He was telling me as usual how wonderful it would be, flowers here and a tree there and a bench under the front window. I saw her further along the street. She was in a tree in another front garden on the same side of the street as us. She was sitting on a fat branch. She had a book and a pencil in her hand. She kept sticking the pencil in her mouth and staring up into the tree. Wonder who that is? She's called Mina. Ah. She must have seen us looking at her, but she didn't move. Dad went in to check the cement in the dining room. I went out the gate and along the street and looked up at Mina in the tree. What are you doing up there? I said. She clicked her tongue. Silly you, she said. You've scared it away. Typical. Scared what away? The blackbird. She put the book and the pencil in her mouth. She swung over the branch and dropped into the garden. She stood looking at me. She was little and she had hair as black as coal and the kind of eyes you think you can see, the kind of eyes you think can see right through you. Never mind, she said. It'll come again. She pointed up to the rooftop. The blackbird was up there, tipping its tail back and forward and squawking. That's its warning call, she said. It's telling its family there's danger near. Danger. That's you. She pointed up into the tree. If you climb up where I was and look along that branch, there you'll see its nest. There's 3 tiny ones, but don't you dare go any nearer. She sat on the garden wall and faced me. This is where I live, she said. Number 7. You've got a baby sister. Yes. What's her name? We haven't decided yet. She clicked her tongue and rolled her eyes towards the sky. She opened her book. Look at this, she said. It was full of birds, pencil drawings, lots of them, coloured in blues and greens and red. This is the blackbird, she said. They're common, but nevertheless very beautiful. A sparrow. These are chaffinches. They're lovely. And look, this is the goldfinch that visited last Thursday. She showed me the goldfinch, the greens and reds and bright yellows in it. My favourite, she said. She slapped the book shut. Do you like birds? She said, and looked at me as if something I'd done had made her cross. I don't know, I said. Typical. Do you like drawing? Sometimes. Drawing makes you look at the world more closely. It helps you to see what you're looking at more clearly. Did you know that? I said nothing. What colour's a blackbird? She said. Black. Typical. She swung round into the garden. I'm going in, she said. I look forward to seeing you again. I'd also like to see your baby sister, if that can be arranged. I tried to stay awake that night, but it was hopeless. I was dreaming straight away. I dreamed that the baby was in the blackbird's nest in Mina's garden. The blackbird fed her on flies and spiders, and she got stronger and stronger until she flew out of the tree and over the rooftops and onto the garage roof. Mina sat on the back wall drawing her. When I went closer, Mina whispered, Stay away, you're danger. Then the baby was bawling in the room next door and I woke up. I lay listening to Mum cooing and comforting and the baby squeaking and hissing. The birds were singing outside. When the feed was over and I was sure everyone was asleep, I crept out of bed, got my torch, pulled some clothes on and tiptoed past their room. I took a jar of aspirin from the bathroom. I went downstairs, opened the back door and tiptoed into the wilderness. The takeaway trays were down under newspapers and a heap of weeds. They tilted over and lots of the sauce had run out. When I looked inside the char siu, it was all gluey and red and cold. I dropped the soggy spring rolls into the same tray and went down towards the garage. You must be stupid, I told myself. You must be going round the stupid bend. I looked up at the blackbird on the garage roof and saw how it opened its yellow beak so wide as it sang. I saw the sheens of gold and blue where the early light shone on its black. I switched on the torch, took a deep breath and stepped inside. The scuttling and scratching started. Something skittered across my foot and I nearly dropped the food. I came to the tea chests and shone the torch behind.
You again,
he squeaked.
Thought you'd gone away.
I will carry on tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Bye.